Hey guys, welcome back to the MCU HQ, and we're doing a fun video today. I previously did this after Spider-Man No Way Home came out, and since then there have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 MCU projects. So I feel like it's time to do this again. So this is an MCU tier list that we are doing. It incorporates everything from Iron Man up through Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, so be warned, there will be spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in this video. Also, I got the Bowie. It looks really cool. I put it on my desk. Also, disclaimer, I'm not including Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Inhumans, Cloak, Dagger, Runaways, or any of the Netflix stuff, or the one-shots on here, which I was initially gonna do, and then I didn't. So we're just looking at the movies and the TV shows, okay? Or the main Disney Plus TV shows. Just the main Infinity Saga and Multiverse Saga stuff. We'll get to one-shots and other shows later. The reason I'm not including any of the Marvel TV stuff is because I haven't seen all of them all the way through. The only ones I've completely finished are Defenders, Daredevil, Agent Carter, and Inhumans. And so that's still a lot that I haven't seen, so basically all those would just go in a have not seen tier, which I think is stupid, and it'd be unfair to rank them if I haven't seen all of them. So I'm leaving them off. Next tier list I do, they'll all be on there. I promise. Also, what I'm going to do when I'm done with this is I'm actually going to pull up my previous tier list that I did after No Way Home came out. I'm going to compare and see where things lie now versus where they were then. I think that'll be fun. So let's pull this up. And you can see here we have all the movies and Disney Plus shows in release order, so it'll be a while before we get to the new stuff. And then we have S, A, B, C, D, and F. Things could change. We might add a couple tiers. You never know. So let us hop into this, starting off with Iron Man. I mean, you all know, this isn't a surprise. Anyone who knows me, anyone who's seen basically anything on my channel knows this is an S for me. Starting off strong. I think not only is this the best MCU movie, or one of the best MCU movies, it's one of my favorite movies ever. It's one of my favorite comic book movies ever. Or it's, yeah, I love this movie. And it is definitely top tier MCU. Now, if anything else will get into S, we shall see as we go, but Iron Man starting us off strong in S tier there. Now, Incredible Hulk, and we're already at a difficult decision here, because there's a lot that I like about Incredible Hulk. There's also things I don't like about Incredible Hulk. The romance, plotline, it's like kind of bad. It's really not great. I think Abomination's not developed as well as he could have been. She-Hulk is actually the reason Abomination is as cool as he is now. I don't know with Incredible Hulk. I think this could go middle of the road for me, actually. I think I'm going to put Incredible Hulk in C. Just kind of a good little middle of the road Marvel movie there. It's not nearly as bad as everyone says it is. But it's not great. It's just a fun time. I'm putting it in C. Also, if you guys know anything about me, I only hate a couple MCU movies. So, like, it's pretty good. A C is pretty good, especially because we're rating these on MCU scale, not movie scale in general, in which case Hulk might be much lower. But in terms of MCU movie scale, this is what we're looking at. Iron Man 2. All right. I have water. I think I'm going to go with D for Iron Man 2. Because Iron Man 2, it has good stuff in it. I like when we're struggling with Tony's alcoholism. I like War Machine. I like Justin Hammer. The issue is everything else. Black Widow is kind of shoehorned in there for the sake of setting up the Avengers. Same with Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that. We have this great plot line with Howard Stark that kind of gets overshadowed because of the plot line with Vanko, which also gets overshadowed, and there's like 10 different plot lines all fighting for attention, and none of them get the screen time that they deserve, and any one or two of them could be an amazing plot for the film, but the issue with them all competing is it means that the film seems way too overstuffed. There's way too much in it. We don't get to devote the time that we need to anything. I also just don't think Whiplash is as fleshed out as he could have been. A lot of disappointing stuff in this movie. It is still a blast to watch, though, and I still stand by it. The Mark V suit-up sequence is the best Iron Man suit-up we've gotten in the MCU. Alright, moving on to Thor. Now, this is where I get to piss off a lot of people because I do think that the first Thor is the best Thor film. I think it's better than Ragnarok. I think it's better than the ones that shall not be named or will be named in a few minutes when we get to them. But I don't know, do I put it in B? Do I dare put it in B? Because, I mean, honestly, there's very few things in this movie that don't work for me. I think Thor's characterization and his arc is beautiful throughout it. His relationship with Loki is great. The fact that Loki has a super complex plan, which usually doesn't work for me when villains have an overly complex plan, but for Loki it, like, does, because that's his whole thing, is that he's the god of mischief. That's what he, like, thrives at. You got Anthony Hopkins in here. Kenneth Branagh directed this. It really is like a Shakespearean tragedy type thing, which really works for me. I think the music is great. I think that Thor getting his powers back is still one of the best moments in the MCU 12 years later. I mean, the Dutch angles aren't great, are they? They really aren't. They aren't that good. The Thor and Jane romance, I think, is fine. I think it's funny, though, because my least favorite Thor movie, which we're going to get to in a while, has the best... Jane and Thor have the best chemistry in that, but I don't know. I think I'm going to put Thor in B, is where I'm going to put it. I really enjoy this movie. I don't think it's worthy of being in the top tiers, but I do think... I think it's worthy enough of going in B. Alright, moving on. Captain America, the First Avenger. This is an interesting one. Every time I watch this, I feel like I like it more and more, especially the music. Oh my god, is the music in this movie amazing. I think that the first half, when he's skinny Steve Rogers, I think is awesome. I mean, you got Stanley Tucci in here. You got Billy Williams in here, or Billy Williams. You have Tommy Lee Jones in here. Wow. Hey, both Harvey Dents, but you have Tommy Lee Jones in here. I think that the relationship between Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers, I think, works really well inside of here. Toby Jones is Arnim Zola. Oh my god, what great casting on that. But here's the issue. Just about everything else. Red Skull, not that great. I feel like he could have been, he could have been this high evolutionary type person, and he just wasn't. They kind of dropped the ball there. And then the back half, after he becomes Captain America, we montage through World War II. We lose a lot of that raw, gritty war drama that the film started out as. Bucky's death is not good. It's not good. They should have done it how they did it in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That was amazing. It's so quick and doesn't really seem emotionally impactful in this movie, though, when it happens. I will say, though, the last 10 minutes of this, of Cap on the plane and then waking up, and then that ending line, peak cinema. Still not sure why he couldn't have ejected out of the plane and then let it crash into the ice. But, you know, it is what it is. So, I think I'm going to put the same tier as Incredible Hulk, because it is fairly middle of the road. For everything I like in it, there's something I don't like in it. So that kind of balances out, and we're going to put it in C tier with Incredible Hulk. The Avengers, it's going in A for Avengers. That's one of the quickest ones I'll decide in this video. Almost everything in this movie works. I think the characters are written pretty well. I think the way they team up, the circumstances behind how they assemble, works really well. They're dynamic within it. That one shot is awesome of seeing them all fight. I think Loki is a very good villain for this first Avengers movie. Someone like Loki could not work going forward for an Avengers movie because they've gotten way too big in scope and scale. And that's up for you to decide if you think that's a good idea or not. But Loki worked very well as a first villain to bring them together. Coulson's death worked really well inside of here too, giving them a motive. And oh my god, Alan Silvestri's score for this movie is nothing shy of perfect. And yeah, I think that Avengers has the best moment in the MCU still. That first assembly, it's better than Portals. Sue me. A for Avengers. Sorry. Okay. Iron Man 3 is always such a tricky one for me to talk about because I love most of this movie. I really do. I think a good 75-80% of Iron Man 3 is incredible. The issue, however, is that other 20 is not. The Mandarin. Okay. So, the Mandarin, honestly, on his own, single-handedly brings this movie down a couple tiers. Because what a waste of a great actor. You had Ben Kingsley. Perfect casting for that part, I feel. I think he was great for it. Yes, he doesn't look the part. Yes, I'm aware they did a bit of a race swapping there to not offend China. But still, I mean, if you're going to get Ben Kingsley, man, what a role to put him in. And then the twist is that, no, he's not actually the Mandarin. And all that really badass, intimidating, and ominous shit that the Mandarin has been doing for an hour and a half was just a cover for who the real villain is, which is Aldrich Killian, who I think falls flat. He is not nearly as scary or cool sounding as Trevor Slattery. And they really, why'd they do that twist? Straight up. And yes, I love that Shang-Chi fixed it and made it cool again, and I really like the villain in that, but we shouldn't have had to get to that point. They should have gotten him right the first time. So that brings it down. I love that Tony's not in the suit for most of this movie. That works for me. Really telling a deep character study there. I like Rhodey's role in this. I like Pepper's role in this. I think this film has some great action sequences. That Air Force One scene is awesome. The house fight is awesome. I'm going to put this in B with Thor, because this is another movie that, yeah, I hate some of what it did, but oh my god, every time I watch it, I love this movie. So I'm going to put it in B. It's going with Thor. Now, Thor the Dark World, on the other hand, is, this was dropping way down. This is not that good of a movie. It doesn't have many things going for it. The Thor-Loki dynamic is the best part of this movie, and Loki is the saving grace of this movie. It's the only thing saving this movie from going into F tier. Jane, who in the first one, I think, was a really cool character. She's not in this movie. She's a plot device that exists purely to get the ether from point A to point B. Thor is the most boring character inside of his own movie, and Malekith was, for many years, the worst villain the MCU has ever had. He's not anymore, but he's still down there. He brings nothing of value to the story. I don't know. He's awful. The best part of this movie, the best two parts of this movie, one, the Siege of Asgard is awesome. Cool action here. You can tell a Game of Thrones director who knows how to direct action sequences directed this movie, because the Siege of Asgard is like a friggin' medieval siege battle, but with spaceships. And then, the other thing is when they first get to Svartalfheim, aka the Dark World, and Thor and Loki are talking. That's a beautifully written scene, but beyond that, yeah, this movie doesn't have much going for it. I'm putting this in D. It's one of the movies that every time I'm doing a rewatch, I'm like, There's other movies that we're going to get to on that in that front, though. Captain America, I just hit my hand, so I have a cut on my hand and I just slapped it. Okay. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Now, this is where I get some hate. I think Winter Soldier is one of the most overrated MCU films. I do not think it's bad by any means. I don't think it's bad. I think it's quite good. I love rewatching this one. However, I don't understand how people put it as a top 3. I don't understand how people put it as number 1. Hell, I wouldn't even put it as a top 5. It's good. It's not that good. But in terms of things that work. First off, Cap's suit. Awesome. I wish he had it the whole movie. I understand why he can't, because there's a tracker in it, and they were after him. But whatever. Cool suit. I think this is the best Black Widow has worked. Her presence in this film elevates it. It almost feels like she needs to be here. Making this a spy, espionage, political thriller type thing was the perfect direction to take this movie and the Captain America franchise in general. The reason that the grounded stories in the MCU all kind of have a feel of Winter Soldier, with the possible exception of Black Widow, is because this movie worked so well. And it's why Civil War and Falcon and Winter Soldier and New World Order follow this so nicely. At least I'm hoping New World Order does, is because of how well this film worked. So that was the perfect genre and route to take this franchise. Alexander Pierce is a great villain. The Winter Soldier is a great villain. He's frightening. He was the scariest MCU villain until Thanos beat Hulk, killed Loki, Heimdall, and beat Thor in the first 5 minutes of Infinity War. Here's my issue with this movie. I feel like Captain America... Well, Nick Fury, sorry, not Captain America. I feel like Nick Fury's slightly out of character because I don't think he would ever buy into Project Insight. But whatever, he did. I also think some of the action's iffy because the Russo brothers is the first big action movie they had done. They've since gotten very good at filming action. We see that in later movies. In just the MCU, but their first one, yes, the fights are awesome. The elevator fight works, the highway fight works, that final fight on the helicarrier works. But if you look back on it, oh my god, there's so many cuts, so many quick cuts, it gets kind of disorienting. That kind of bothers me. But not that much, and I think Winter Soldier's knife flip is great. So while I don't think this is one of the greatest MCU movies out there, it deserves to be pretty damn high up, so I'm putting it in A. So, there we go. We are in desperate need of an F. Look at this. Poor F needs some help. Well, we're getting there. Don't you guys worry. Alright, Guardians of the Galaxy. I was thinking about this yesterday on where I want to put Guardians of the Galaxy, because for me it's a toss-up between two different tiers. Every character in Guardians of the Galaxy is awesome, notably Star-Lord and Groot. But all 5 of them are great. I think the story of them assembling and how they get together and their common, what they share between them, their commonality or whatever the word is, I think that's awesome. The soundtrack, great. The score, great. Everything about this movie is great. Except for 2 people. That's Nebula and Ronan. Nebula's very one-note in this movie, and I think now, having seen the entire trilogy and Infinity War and Endgame, that was almost intentional, that she was supposed to be intentionally one-note and just this assassin. And then we see her depth in later movies. Ronan's not that great of a villain. We know he wants to destroy Xandar because it's like, Kree, Xandarians, Kree don't get along, Xandar does stuff Kree don't like, he wants to destroy it. They really needed to go further with that. They really needed to flesh out Ronan more as a character. And yeah, him not having much connection to the Guardians, yes, he knows Gamora, but it's not like 2 and 3 where there's a straight emotional connection to the villain. I think that also kind of hurts him. Okay. I'm torn between S and A. Because I rewatched this movie prior to Guardians 3. And I always forget just how incredible it is. But I like the sequels more. I'm going to put Guardians 1 in A for now. We can always move it. We can always move it to S. It's not locked in. It's not locked in once it's on the tier list. Okay, Avengers Age of Ultron. Oh, Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron would have been received much better if it was marketed as the movie we ended up getting. I stand by that statement. I will die on that hill. But instead, they marketed this very dark and bleak Avengers movie that was almost going to feel kind of scary. And the movie is just not that. They marketed a much better movie. Also, this movie has way too much stuff in it. It's trying to set up the entire rest of the Infinity Saga and bring in all these new characters. Like, it's introducing 3 new superheroes and then also trying to set up Infinity War, Black Panther, Civil War. They don't set up Doctor Strange or Spider-Man, but they're trying to set up like the rest of the Infinity Saga with this one movie instead of focusing on what they need to focus on, which was the fight with Ultron, who is not great. He's awesome in his first scene. He starts to lose his cool factor in later scenes as he just starts to behave more like Tony Stark, which I don't like. I would have just preferred we get normal Ultron. Although he's rumored to be coming back, and if he comes back, hopefully there's a good reason for it, and hopefully he's better, because God, James Spader killed that role. But this movie has also aged beautifully. Every time I rewatch it, I find myself liking it more, and I think it's because the MCU has, like, embraced it, and Age of Ultron is one of the most important things in the MCU that you need to watch to understand basically everything that comes out after. So that definitely helps it. I never disliked this movie like some people did, but I don't like it like others have begun to, and everyone says this movie's underrated, and so many people have said it to the point that this movie actually feels kind of overrated now. I think I'm going to put Age of Ultron in C. Again, just like Guardians, Age of Ultron could move. Ant-Man's also a C. I think Ant-Man's fairly middle of the road. There's nothing it does that other Marvel movies don't do better, but it doesn't do anything poorly, except Yellow Jacket. Yellow Jacket's he's the not great part of this. He's really not. And the movie feels a lot like Iron Man, but I think Scott Lang is great inside this. I think Hank Pym is great inside this. Wasp or Hope in this, I think, falls flat. Again, I've said Yellow Jacket falls flat. The action is great. The ant action is great. I love that the final fight takes place on a Thomas the Tank Engine set. Luis is awesome. And this movie made people like Ant-Man. The sequels, on the other hand, started to dwindle that love for the character. But I think I'm going to put it in C. It's just a pretty middle-of-the-road, entertaining Marvel movie. Captain America Civil War. I adore Captain America Civil War. And I know, I only remember a couple rankings from my last tier list. I know I put Civil War in S. That ain't budging. Civil War deserves to be an S tier. Civil War is that good. And the more I think about it, the more it might be ready to beat out Infinity War as my favorite Russo Brothers Marvel movie. The conflict between Captain America and Iron Man, I think, is set up very well, and they paint it in a way that there's not really a black and white. There is some gray area, and you see how both sides could be right, even though at the end of the day you probably agree with Captain America. But you can see where Tony's coming from. You can see that gray area, and you can flip-flop. I flip-flopped watching the movie. I always flip-flop watching this movie. It's my favorite thing about it. And then you see the different sides the characters are taking and how they ended up on those sides, and every single one of them has a motivation to be where they are. And then they're introducing Spider-Man and Black Panther into this. They're bringing Ant-Man into the larger MCU with this. Wanda, Vision, they're Avengers now. We're really seeing the aftermath of Age of Ultron, but at the end of the day, it's still so much a Steve Rogers story, and it all revolves around him, and it is very much a Captain America film. I think Zemo is a phenomenal villain. I know a lot of people, for some reason, say he's one note, even though he's not. He has a real motive to be doing what he's doing. You understand why he's doing it, even though you don't agree with it. And he beat the Avengers without so much as lifting a finger. He's an incredible villain. The one person I've kind of went back and forth on if I like it in this movie or not is Scarlet Witch, because she kind of seems like she's indecisive and just keeps flip-flopping between sides and then only goes to Cap because she needs, because they need 2 teams of 6. But having rewatched the movie a couple times since that tier list, I do get Wanda's struggle more in the movie and why she ultimately goes to Team Cap. I still think it could have been executed a bit better than it is, but I get it. I get it enough to the point that I think the movie deserves an S. Other than that, the movie's kind of gray, but it's not nearly as bad as Endgame. We'll talk about that when we get there. So, yeah, I'm going S for Captain America Civil War. Doctor Strange is good. It's better than its sequel. It does feel a lot like Iron Man, and I don't want to put things that feel like a copy and paste into higher up tiers. I'm going to have to keep Doctor Strange down low, or not too low though, because I do like it. It's not going in S or A. I think Stephen Strange in this is great. This movie turned him into one of my favorite Marvel characters. I think Caecilius falls flat. as a villain, like completely flat. They had a prelude comic, I don't know if it's canon, that explains why Caecilius is the way it is. And he has so much depth in that comic, and I'm not going to spoil the comic because I want all of you to read it because I love that story. It's an awesome story of how Caecilius became how he is and why he went to the dark side and all that. And if all of that was in the movie, this movie would be like, it'd be way up there. But considering it's not, the movie's coming down a bit. I love the Ancient One. I think that her death scene and her talking with Stephen Strange is one of my favorite scenes in the MCU. The action it's fine. They weren't really creative with the magic action in this. They got better with it in each movie, and in Multiverse of Madness, it's awesome. We'll talk about that when we get to Multiverse of Madness. But now, as I rewatch this movie and I see how Doctor Strange fights, and yes, I get he's a novice, but oh my god, those fight scenes have just become a lot of the same thing, of just orange energy beam, other orange energy beam, and there's a lot more to magic than that. And I feel like no one realized that till Sam Raimi came along and started doing cool shit. So, I think I'm going to put it in B. I think that's a fair place for it. It's there with Thor and Iron Man 3. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is one of my biggest MCU hot takes, is that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is damn near perfect. I'm putting an S with Iron Man and Captain America Civil War. I think a lot of people say this is a movie with two B plots desperately in search of an A plot. I can understand that, but there is not a second of this movie that I do not adore. I am on board for basically all of it. It makes me cheer, it makes me laugh, it makes me emotional with that third act. The only thing that's like, is the Sovereign. However, Guardians 3 has fixed the Sovereign a little bit. Not much. But I don't know. I'm putting Guardians 2 in S. I adore this film. I think it's beautiful. I think it belongs there. Now, Spider-Man Homecoming, okay, here's the thing. Spider-Man Homecoming was always interesting for me because I hate its sequel. And so because of that, I feel like sometimes I hate on Homecoming. Which is unfair because Homecoming doesn't deserve the hate that I gave it. I'm sorry, Homecoming. I think that Spidey having a very teched out suit makes sense when you remember the fact the story is about how he doesn't need that to be Spider-Man, but then the ending undoes that because he gets the suit back, whatever. Tony Stark in this film, I think he needs to be in this film the way he's in this film. They way overcook the Spider-Man mentorship in the rest of the MCU, but in Homecoming I think it works the way it needs to be. Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, is a top-tier Marvel villain. John Watts hasn't really missed too much. We'll talk about Mysterio, but he hasn't done too bad when it comes to the villains in his trilogy. And then, man, that plot twist, that's like kind of a modern-day Empire Strikes Back. When he opens the door and Vulture is Liz's dad, like, oh my god, that's awesome. I think if there's any weak points in this film, it is that the action in this, when you have a character who can fly and a character who can swing around on webs, the action is incredibly, incredibly boring. The final fight takes place, instead of next to that ferry, or not the ferry, the Ferris wheel, the little theme park there, I cannot for the life of me remember what it's called. It takes place on a beach right next to it. So Vulture's not flying and Spider-Man's not swinging. Why did they do that? And then you have the plane scene that's the same thing. Vulture's just on the plane and Spidey has to hang on so he's not swinging. What you have characters with awesome abilities that would be awesome in a fight with each other. Why are they not using them? I hate it. The coolest scene is the Washington Monument scene. That's cool. I love the way he saves everyone. I love the joke that comes from it, and Ned is one of the best parts of this movie. But for some reason, doesn't get to be on any of the posters for any of the Spider-Man movies. So, oh yeah, and the soundtrack in this movie is great too. I'm gonna put Homecoming in A. I really do like this, though, at the end of the day. This is such a fun one to rewatch. I enjoy most of it. I love the journey that Peter goes on. Yes, they repeat it in Far From Home. We'll talk about Far From Home when we get there. So I'm gonna put it in A. Okay, Thor Ragnarok. So my love for Thor Ragnarok has gone down over the years, and it's not because of Love and Thunder. It's because I've started to notice some holes in this movie. Like the fact that the jokes just don't work all the time. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they really do. This one's actually it is quite funny. A lot of the jokes do land. Some of them fall flat. The issue when I say jokes, instead of less of they don't work, I mean it's almost they're too prominent for the story they're doing. Ragnarok, okay? Doom is about to befall Asgard, and then Thor's sister comes in, kills the entire army of Asgard, is now ruling it and trying to find all the citizens so that she can find Heimdall and his sword so that she can use it to conquer the 9 realms. Meanwhile, Thor and Loki and Hulk and Valkyrie technically are all enslaved on Sakaar. Why is this movie so funny? It should be serious. And then you cut from all these jokes on Sakaar to just on Asgard, and it's just a massacre, and it's kind of a tonal shift. Taika Waititi always has an issue with that, I feel. But tonal shift happens. I think the fight between Thor and Hulk is cool. I do really like that. I like most of the action. I think the final fight's great. I think Thor learning he doesn't need his hammer is great. I do really like most of this movie. I think Loki's awesome in this, and it concludes this great 3-film arc that Loki went on. Oh yeah, you know who else is in this that's great? Korg. Korg's in here. Korg's awesome in this movie. He sucks in the sequel, but Korg's great in this. Valkyrie's great in this. In terms of villains, I mean, you got the Grandmaster, Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. It works for that character. You have Cate Blanchett's Hela is a great villain. Scourge really falls flat, and it sucks because they try to give Scourge a redemption arc, even though he was never evil. He didn't execute anyone in the movie, so he didn't really deserve a redemption arc because he was never a bad guy. And then, of course, Surtur, he serves the person he needs to serve, so I can't really complain about him. I love the twist that instead of stopping Ragnarok, they have to cause Ragnarok. Asgard not a place, it's people. All that. It's fun. It's a fun movie. I think it's a revamp that Thor genuinely needed, and I like they cut his hair and took Mjolnir away from him. The best Thor movies are the ones where he doesn't have his weapon. The bad ones are the ones where he does have his weapon. But I'm going to put it in B, because I enjoy it just enough that it works in B for me, even though I have some issues with it. Black Panther, the first Black Panther. What a film. I rewatched this before Wakanda Forever. I rewatched Civil War and Black Panther before I watched Wakanda Forever. And, yeah, I still love this movie. I still love this movie. It'll never be bad in my mind. I think it's great. Yes, it has weak points. And I do gotta say, okay, just right off the bat, I do have to say, first off, the final battle sucks. It's not that exciting, and it looks atrocious because Marvel was moving all the VFX teams over to Infinity War because that was the more important one. And so they didn't get to finish Black Panther CGI, so it's just a giant cartoon at the end. Also, this movie feels like two movies. The first half of this movie and the last half of this movie with Killmonger are very different movies. Tonally, storytelling-wise, directing-wise, acting-wise, completely different films, and they just crammed Black Panther 1 and 2 into Black Panther 1. And it distracts me so much every time I watch this movie. The moment they get to Warrior Falls with Killmonger, I'm like, we're watching something different. We had a fun globe-trotting action movie. This ain't a fun globe-trotting action movie anymore. Now it's a big, weird political thriller. But holy shit, it's a good movie. And Killmonger's a great villain. Claw's a good villain when he's there. I still hate that they killed him off and they took out Black Panther's two biggest villains in the first movie. I mean, what a waste of Andy Serkis, if I'm being honest. Do I put an A or B, though? Well, I have Homecoming in A. And that's on my MCU rating. What is playing? Oh. On my actual ranking of the MCU, I think I have Black Panther around there. I'm gonna put it in A. I'm gonna put Black Panther in A. A lot of stuff works for this film, even the stuff where it gets crazy, even the stuff that doesn't work feels like it works, like the fact there's 2 totally different movies in this movie works, and it's just a good movie, except the 3rd act. Oh my god, is it not good. Killmonger does drop like the coldest line, one of the coldest lines in Marvel history. Namor drops one of the other ones, and Scarlet Witch drops one, and we'll get there soon. Avengers Infinity War. Okay, Optimus, stop. Here's the thing. Infinity War on its own. S. Infinity War in the context of the rest of the MCU and what it has done for future projects, like a B. I think, okay, let me start off with what Infinity War does wrong. Alright? Hulk. Everything they do with Hulk in Infinity War and Endgame is just not good. It's really not. Like, they think they have an arc for this character when they don't have an arc for this character, and he's just walking around the movie like an idiot. Also, they undo pretty much all of Thor Ragnarok in this movie. Thor gets a weapon. Yes, there's a story reason for why he needs a weapon, but holy shit, it's very jarring if you come off of Ragnarok straight into Infinity War. Thor gets his eye back. I guess the Russos and Marks and McFeely missed the memo about what was up with Thor's eye, and they undid that. They body all of Asgard in the start of this movie, but I never had an issue with that. That worked because Ragnarok set that up. They kill Loki, which, again, I'm okay with that. I'm just pointing out things that it undoes. Endgame actually undoes more, I think. I'm gonna argue. Oh, yeah, and back to Hulk. They say in Ragnarok he's going to be Hulk permanently. Beautiful arc with Bruce Banner and Hulk in Thor Ragnarok. And then the Russos come along. And then he's back to Bruce Banner. And now Hulk is a big pansy. And what happened? What happened to Hulk? Anthony and Joe. Steven and Christopher. What did you do to Hulk? Like, act what you did and then defend it? Don't ever do that. It's not good. It's really not. Now, also, we can talk about the Guardians all we want in this movie, and if they were in character, and if what Star-Lord did was in character. James Gunn doesn't seem to think so, whatever. I think it backtracks the Guardians a little bit, because, like, Rocket's back to being just an asshole, even though at Guardians 2, he, like, really wasn't that, and we see in 3 that he's gone on that arc where he's not really a dick anymore. He's kind of a dick in Infinity War, kind of backtracks that arc. Star-Lord has his jet boots and his helmet back, even though those are both supposed to be gone, and James Gunn has all but confirmed that. Endgame, I think, commits more sins against it, and is Star-Lord punching Thanos out of character? That's up to you to decide. Now, in terms of good things, Thanos, oh my god. Still the best Marvel villain. Iron Man, Spider-Man, awesome in this. Doctor Strange, awesome in this. Cap, that Wakanda crew, awesome in this. This is the best Thor movie, period. Just about everything in this movie works. And so, despite the complaining fest I just went on, oh yeah, the emotions work too. And I mean, we lose so many characters. We lose, Heimdall, yes, but in terms of main ones, we lose Loki, Gamora and Vision are the permanent deaths. I'm going to complain about that in a minute. But then we also lose all the people from the snap, and it's very emotional. It's a deeply emotional movie. You feel the loss of this movie. You feel the sense of climax for the MCU with this movie. And once again, Thanos is awesome. So, despite the complaining session I just went on, I'm putting Infinity War in S. I still think it's an awesome film. Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I rewatched Ant-Man and the Wasp before Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Now what sucks about the fact that I'm about to put Ant-Man and the Wasp in the lowest tier is that Quantumania is somehow worse. Ant-Man and the Wasp does not have much going for it. They made Ant-Man an idiot in this movie. Scott Lang's not an idiot. He's an idiot in this movie. He's actually dumb. They really overcook it with Luis, I think, in this. Yes, it's awesome that he's there. It's awesome that he's involved. I think they overcook it. They have him do his storytelling thing several times in the movie. Hank Pym shows a dark side in this movie that's not fleshed out enough. It's Hank Pym. It's one of the most darkest superheroes in Marvel. We don't flesh that out enough. This movie has 3 villains. Ghost, Goliath, and Sonny Birch. They all fall flat. None of them work as villains inside of this. The movie also looks horrible. It looks gray. It looks grayer than gray. Like, it looks like raw footage, quite honestly. There's no color grade on it whatsoever, and that stands out every time I watch this movie. I think they gave most of the cool stuff to Wasp, but one really cool character, and I do love Wasp in this movie, one really cool character does not save the fact the rest of the movie is just kind of a snooze fest. So, I'm going to put it in F. I'm sorry, I think it might be worse than Dark World and Iron Man 2. It might just be. Because it doesn't even have cool action. It would if they didn't show all the cool shrinking and growing in the trailer, so there's nothing to get excited about in the movie. You see all it. You see the Pez dispenser. You see the car shrinking and growing. You see the lab shrinking and growing. You see Giant Man in the trailer. You see Wasp shrinking and growing between cars. You see Ghost phasing between cars. You see Ant-Man skating on the truck. All in the trailer. There's nothing that surprised us in this movie, so it's just boring. There's nothing to anticipate, so I'm putting it in F. And we have now arrived at Captain Marvel. And this is where, boys, I get to make a new tier. So let us make a new tier. So let's add a row below. And then let's go to that row. Whoops. Whoa, I'm bumping stuff. Go down. Okay. Let us go to that row and let's make it, let's do blue. Okay. Can I add like whoa, I wasn't done. It'd be cool if I could like add emojis. I don't think I can though. But we're gonna, how do I want to title this? Do I want to title this as something like dog shit? Do I want to title it, I'm just gonna title it Captain Marvel. So we have a Captain Marvel tier. Cool. So here's the way this works. Anything can go in Captain Marvel tier, but Captain Marvel cannot go higher than Captain Marvel tier. This is the worst Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. Nothing about this film works except Talos. Captain Marvel is the most boring protagonist of all time. I have not seen a movie in a while where I just was bored by the protagonist this much. I've not seen a comic book movie where being this powerful can be so not fun. She should be doing cool shit because she's that cool, but she's not. The comic they based this movie on, or that they took elements from for this movie, is a very good comic. Go read it. I will go get the comic right here. Okay? Kelly Sue DeConnick's Run. I don't have every volume, I only have one of them. This is a great comic. I love it so much. If they were taking elements of this, why was the movie so bad? Also, the art in it is great. Look at that. Just look at that panel real quick. There's a splash page. I'm not going to get into praising this comic too much, because this video is about the movies. And this movie. Okay, so we talked about that Captain Marvel sucks. How are the rest of the characters? Just as bad, if not worse. They made Nick Fury kind of an idiot in this, and he lost all his badass the moment they decided to have a cat scratch out his eye. Dumbest thing the MCU ever did. Maria Rambeau would be really compelling if she was in the movie for more than 4 minutes. Jan Rog, what an awful villain. The Supreme Intelligence, a very cool concept, very piss poor execution. Also, the action in this sucks. I have no emotional investment in anything that's happening. I mean, you have, at the end of this movie, Captain Marvel has to fight her friends, the team she was with for what she assumes to be years of her life. And she has no emotional, she doesn't feel anything when she beats all their asses. At the end of the movie, it's like, oh my god. She finally has to do something without her powers, and then she just blasts Jan Rog. And I get what they're going for with that I have nothing to prove to you line. But as an audience member, I'm like, cool, so she's just reliant on her powers. It's the worst form of storytelling, I feel. And if you want to know just how bad and forgettable this movie is, this movie made $1 billion. And no one knows who the hell the directors are. Usually when a movie makes this much, their name is floating around for quite a while, and I don't think either of these people have done anything since this movie came out. I mean, hey, the movie made $1 billion, but Marvel didn't even bring them back for the sequel. So, yeah. The only thing that works is Talos, but even then, I mean, he's not the best character. He's just cool. I like him, and I like the twist that this sect of Skrulls aren't completely evil, and I think this movie sets up Secret Invasion well. I haven't seen Secret Invasion yet, but yeah, no, I don't like rewatching this movie. We know that I like rewatching the Marvel stuff before I see the next thing. I'm not rewatching this before I see Secret Invasion. I'm not rewatching this before I see the Marvels. I don't like this movie. Well, I might rewatch before I see the Marvels because I might do an MCU binge at some point this summer after Secret Invasion comes out. But yeah, it's like it's bad. It's a bad movie. Avengers Endgame. Oh, how bad do I want to piss off the fans right now? Avengers Endgame is not that great. Avengers Endgame is so unbelievably mid that I hate the fact that everyone uses it as a metric of, like, the gold standard. Of, like, oh my god, everyone's saying Guardians 3 is the best movie since Endgame. I'm like, that's not that hard. Endgame's not that good. But do I start with what's good or what's bad? I'll start with what's good. Iron Man, Captain America, and Black Widow are great. Hawkeye, great. The concept of the story, great. The third act, mostly great. It has some weak stuff in it. And then the first 25 minutes of this movie, leading up to the time jump, are great. And then leading up to when they get Hulk are fine. The issue is that there are 2 hours in between that are not that good. So you have whatever cool stuff was left with Hulk, they got rid of by making him Professor Hulk off screen and turning him into a walking meme. I don't care if it makes sense for the story because Bruce Banner got to miss out on a lot of that stuff and he's finally cool. It did not work. You have Fat Thor, whose arc in this movie consists of going from one weapon to 2 weapons. You have the time heist, which the issue with the time heist is instead of doing it like normal movie time travel does, they do it how scientists think time travel works, which is where you create a branch timeline, which means you're allowed to interact with yourself. You can do stuff like that and not break your own reality, which means there's like no stakes whatsoever. Also, they try to put in the stakes by having the 2 nebulas share a Wi-Fi password, and then that's how Thanos comes to the present day. But at no point did I ever feel like someone was in danger. The only time I felt like someone was in danger was on Vormir, because it's the only time anyone actually was in danger, because someone had to die. I understand that what they want to do with Endgame was almost make an MCU retrospective, but at times, does it not feel like the movie is just a cameo fan service fest? Why the hell is Alexander Pierce in this movie? Because people recognize him from Winter Soldier. It's stuff like that. It's just it pops up everywhere in the time heist. There are only a few moments in the time heist that I think are genuinely exciting moments. It is I think when they first get to New York, it's quite fun. I think the way they lose the Tesseract is fine. I like that the Ancient One explains how time travel works, but it's like I'm trying to find moments within the time heist where I'm like, oh my god, this is like really good. But the big two are, of course, Thor seeing his mom, which is amazing. It's beautiful. And then Tony seeing his dad, which is also beautiful. Those 2 moments are great. But that's it, honestly. And besides, obviously, Black Widow's death, which I think is great. I love Black Widow's death. I love both deaths in this movie because Iron Man dies also, and that's a great ending for that character. But that is ultimately the issue, is that you have your main plot of this movie is so unexciting to watch because they wanted to follow the supposed laws of physics instead of doing what works well for movies. There's a reason the greatest time travel movies, you know, when I think of them, like the first 2 Terminator movies, even the best time traveling superhero movies like Days of Future Past, The time traveling works how time travel usually works in movies, and the reason they do it that way instead of the way Endgame did is because Endgame's method is boring as fuck, and the usual movie method of time travel is exciting. So Endgame's kind of boring. As for the third act, the issue with the third act is that it almost becomes too much. So you have the trio against Thanos, I think works great. It's one of my favorite fights in the MCU. Portals, I think, starts off amazing. Portals starts to falter a bit because the writers and directors quickly realize they have way too many characters for this fight. So that becomes things like, oh, well, let's have Thanos bomb the place while they're fighting, so that way all the sorcerers are taken out of the fight because we have too many sorcerers because they have to make shields. And then, oh, the whole place is flooding because of the bombs? That's okay. We'll just have Doctor Strange be, stopping the water for the entire fight instead of having a different sorcerer do it while he does cool Sorcerer Supreme shit. And then the all-female team-up. Here's what bothers me about the all-female team-up. Not that it happens. Because yes, it feels forced. And yes, it feels like it's too much. But it could have worked. The issue is they set it up as like, oh, Captain Marvel needs help because she can't get through that alone, and that's why all these other women are going to come help her. But then Captain Marvel gets through it alone, so what the hell was the point? It's like, what? Some of the decisions they make in this movie, and this movie's great in theaters. It's still the best theater experience I've ever had. Seeing this with fans, opening night, nothing will ever top it. It was perfect. On rewatches, though, you realize it was only ever meant for a one-time viewing on a theater screen because, oh my god, it's not that good. It's super mid. I'm putting this in C. And I know I'm going to piss off a lot of fanboys with that. On my Marvel ranking, it's literally in the center. It's a C-tier movie. I'm not sorry. Granted, it's fun. Like, I enjoy watching it. At the time, it's everything I wanted from the finale. But now, 4 years into this movie, I can name off so many issues. I can name off more issues than good stuff in this movie, actually. But the deaths are great. And the prologue is great, so, it has that going for it. Spider-Man Far From Home. I hate it. I don't, actually, that's a bit unfair. I'll put it in D. I don't like Spider-Man Far From Home. I genuinely think it's bad. I think that they redid Peter's arc from Homecoming, because I guess they could. And it's so stupid because his whole arc is like, oh, you don't need to be the next Iron Man. You can just be Spider-Man because no one can live up to Tony. Just be your own guy, which, yeah, they did that in Homecoming, but whatever. And then right after that amazing scene, he gets a multi-million-dollar Stark Industries lab so that he can make a multi-million-dollar suit and then be airdropped into Europe while AC/DC plays. So they just undid his arc in the next scene. And everyone's like, yeah, he made his suit. Yeah, he made his suit with the same shit Iron Man suits are made out of. So, like, it's not a cool character moment, because he's not being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's being a friggin' billionaire. I will say, so, considering how poorly the MCU adapted Spider-Man in his second movie, and then the fact that they did One More Day in No Way Home, or One Bad Day, it's called One More Day, right? Awful comic, amazing movie. We'll talk about No Way Home in a few minutes. But the fact that they adapted that leads me to believe they're going to try to adapt the storyline where Peter Parker becomes a billionaire, or they're going to try to adapt the current comics they're doing. And if they do that, I might actually walk into the Sony offices and start beating the shit out of people. But whatever, that's a problem for the future. That's not a problem for right now. I honestly don't like Peter's arc in this movie at all. I think it's redundant, it's undone, and it's kind of boring. This movie's hella boring. This movie has a third act in the middle of its second act, and then just has the rest of the movie after that. I think Mysterio is cool until the twist, where he becomes very one note for the rest of the movie. I don't like MJ in this. I think MJ's great in No Way Home. I don't think MJ's great in this movie. and the way she finds out Peter's Spider-Man is the lamest storytelling I think I've ever seen. Ned gets heavily sidelined, which is a bummer because he was maybe the best part of Homecoming and probably would have made this movie more enjoyable, but nope, he gets sidelined. You also have the illusion scenes, which are great, I will say. I love the illusion scenes, but it's just like so much of this movie's dumb. Like the fact that at the end, Happy, MJ, Betty Brant, and Flash are just able to run into the Queen's treasure vault with no issue. No one's stopping them from doing that. I don't care if there's a war going on outside. I wouldn't be able to run to the White House. Like you don't do stuff like that. Happy and Aunt May's relationship, what the hell was that? Yes, I know No Way Home kind of fixed it, but like, we're looking at this movie as it is, and it did that, and it was awful. Brad Davis, who they introduce in this, and then is just written out of the sequel because everyone, even the people who love this movie, hated Brad, and like, why'd they introduce him when they could have just given that role to Flash? Because Flash, just make him have a thing for MJ. It's not that hard. So yeah, no, this movie has good scenes. I think the opening, with the in memoriam and kind of picking up the pieces of the blip is cool, but then they made the blip a comedic thing. I like, there's parts of it that work. However, most of it doesn't. And Mysterio's a straight up Iron Man villain. I have a whole rant, like 30-some minute rant talking about Far From Home. Go watch it. So, yeah, for me, is it better than Ant-Man and the... You know what? It's not. I'm going to tell you why. I did a ranking of the Marvel films. Or of the Phase 3 films. I put Ant-Man and the Wasp above Far From Home. So I'm putting Far From Home in F. Every time I watch Far From Home, I dislike it more. That shouldn't happen. It's like Endgame. 2019 was an awful year. You think about that? In 2019, we got Captain Marvel, Endgame, and Far From Home. And all of them were like, yeah, they were good at the time. And I rewatched them, I'm like, the fuck is this? God. And we got Ant-Man and the Wasp right before that. How did people not get sick of the MCU in 2018? Oh my god. But that wraps up Phase 3. So that's the Infinity Saga. You can probably see that right there. So let us move on to Phase 4. So we're officially into the multiverse saga here. So we have almost as many projects to rank and tier list here. WandaVision. I am kind of torn on WandaVision. Like, it's good, but like at the same time, it does some stupid things, like bringing in Evan Peters for fan service, and then saying that's the same thing as the Mandarin twist. No, it wasn't. Not at all. And also, like, there's several plot holes in this series. They open up a lot of cans of worms that they just don't really follow up on. And then some of the things that happen, they just ignore. So Pietro shows up. He looks different. Wanda acknowledges the fact that he sounds different. She does not ever, I guess, notice the fact that her blood brother looks different. Other characters in the show mention, hey, what's up with, how exactly did this happen? And the only answer we get is, oh, Agatha put a spell on him. That's not an answer for anything. That doesn't explain why Wanda didn't realize that he looked different. The last episode's not good. It's the last episode of WandaVision's the worst episode of WandaVision. Now, I've come around on it a lot over the couple years since this has been out, but yeah, it's the worst episode because it takes what was a very inventive series, not just for Marvel, but for TV as a whole. I mean, WandaVision was revolutionary, and then it just turned it into a typical Marvel thing at the end, and I didn't like that. However, the 8 episodes before it, holy shit, they're good. I mean, we get some amazing writing through this. We get amazing characterization for Wanda, Vision, and Monica Rambeau, especially Wanda. That eighth episode in particular is awesome. I love the sitcom style of what they're doing, and the production design for this. No Marvel series has looked this good. At least not the Disney Plus ones, because Daredevil still looks the best. But none of these series have looked quite as good as WandaVision. Have I really been doing this for an hour? I think I have. I'm going to put it in A. I don't think WandaVision quite deserves S because it has too many things that bother me, but every time I watch this, I fall back in love with the show. I get emotional again at a lot of those moments, and I love it. Literally, if I do an MCU rewatch and I start WandaVision, I watch the whole series in a day. Like, I don't want to stop. I just keep hitting next episode. And I've rewatched it several times. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Oh boy, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, what do we do with you? Because I don't love this show. I think it's like actually not that good. I think it started off, and it was the one I was most excited for when it was first announced, because I love both of these characters, but they did drop the ball, and granted the pandemic helped with some of that, because they had a pandemic plotline in the show they had to completely cut out, and that removed a lot of the villain, that removed a lot of her drive and her motive and her, I guess, her story. So she just becomes incredibly one note. It's almost like they were afraid to have a villain who was right, because Carly was kind of right. And it's like Marvel was afraid to have a villain who was kind of right, so they just made her literally an awful person and a straight up terrorist at the end of this, even though she had more depth in the earliest episodes. And I'm like, why did you do that? Like, it's okay. DC did the same thing with the Batman. Nando V Movies made a great video on this. It is okay to have a villain who is kind of right, but just has the wrong ways of going about it. I would argue those are some of the best villains. But they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't let that happen for this series. You have an episode and a half devoted to fixing a boat, which would work if this was a longer series. But I really understand the message of the boat and what it means, but I feel like it doesn't add much. I have frequently said Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a top tier movie. So Falcon and the Winter Soldier is an amazing 2.5 hour movie that is stretched into a very, very, very mediocre 5-hour TV show. And you can tell this should have been a movie. Bucky he has a lot to do, but he still does somehow get sidelined for most of it. The series also never truly justifies its existence, because at the end of Endgame, in what is a phenomenal scene, Falcon says he'll be Captain America. He'll do his best to be Captain America. At the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he takes the shield and says he'll do his best to be Captain America. So there's not really much there. You can kind of skip this show altogether, couldn't you? Best parts of the show, I feel, were Isaiah Bradley and U.S. Agent. It either needed more episodes or it needed to be a movie for each of those things to be even better than they were, but I think those are the two redeeming things of this show, and I have not watched this show at all since it came out. I have rewatched Loki since it came out. I've rewatched Hawkeye since it came out. I've rewatched WandaVision several times. I have not rewatched... I watched most of Moon Knight. I have not rewatched most of 2022 stuff, because it's like... whatever. We'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, I've not watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, despite the fact that I love both these characters. I love Captain America, and that says something about the quality of this show. So I'm putting this in D tier. I think it fell flat. I hope New World Order's better. Now, as for Loki, woo! Oh, I love Loki. Loki is the best series they've done. I have switched it with Moon Knight as of officially. I think it is better than Moon Knight. Loki, for me, does not have a weak moment. I think it starts off strong and it ends just as strong. Jonathan Majors is He Who Remains. Great, we'll get that out of the way now. Yes, is he maybe a criminal? Possibly, we'll see. We don't really know where we stand with that. Marvel's probably going to have to recast him anyway, but regardless, he's great as He Who Remains. On to actual Loki, though. Loki's arc in this is great. And yes, at this point, this is a good time to mention, now that we're at Loki, that they have undone every single Infinity War death, because Gamora came back in Endgame, Loki came back in Endgame, and Vision came back in WandaVision. So I guess Infinity War doesn't... Who cares at this point, right? And all the people who snapped came back, so yeah, cool. No, Loki's arc in this, yes, it's a fast-tracked version of what he went through up to Ragnarok, but I mean, that's not Michael Waldron's fault. He was just coming in to do the job that Marvel put him in a corner to do. And I think Michael Waldron's a good writer. We'll talk about that when we get to Doctor Strange. But I love the way he wrote the series. I love the way he wrote Loki. I think Sylvie needs to be in here, and her dynamic and her contrast to the main Loki we know, I think, works incredibly well. I can't wait to see Sylvie again in Season 2, and I love that dynamic of, like, Sylvie is everything Loki doesn't want to be, so the final fight comes down to him having to fight himself. And him falling in love with himself is so in character for Loki. Don't pretend it isn't just a hate on this show. It is such a Loki thing to do, and it's nothing compared to what he does in the actual mythology. So, yeah, and if you say it's based on the comics, yeah, but they based it on mythology also. And the idea is that the mythology came to be because of the Asgardians. So, like, yeah, nothing compared to what Loki does in all of the different source materials. Owen Wilson as Mobius. Like, I cannot sing the praise of this show high enough. Even the filler episode is really good. Lamentus, beautiful. I love it. I'm putting Loki S tier. I think this is the best. It's the best. It's the best series they've done. Now, there's been rumors going around the Secret Invasion's better. I really hope so. Because these shows have mostly fallen flat. Black Widow. Okay. Here's the thing with Black Widow, and basically everyone agrees with this. The first 2/3 of Black Widow are actually pretty solid. The last third of Black Widow absolutely goes off the rails. And it's like we go from what felt like a grounded spy drama to a fortress in the sky that is falling, and Natasha and Taskmaster are fighting on a piece of it as it's falling, and like, why? It's bad. Taskmaster, they really screwed up Taskmaster. I feel bad for Kate Shortland. She didn't want to use Taskmaster. Marvel forced her to use Taskmaster, so she had to make Taskmaster work for the story. So it's not really her fault. But still, oh my god, you gotta adapt Taskmaster better. They changed Taskmaster's gender, which doesn't bother me. I'm okay with a gender swap. I'm not okay with making Taskmaster a mute and making her abilities not actual superpowers, but just computers. And also, Taskmaster looks awful. I know they were trying to hide the skull because China, but the movie didn't release in China anyway. So there was no point! Black Widow's family works. I think Yelena and Melina and Alexei work. I don't think Melina's coming back, though. It's kind of a bummer. But this movie also, more so than any other Marvel movie, does the thing where they have a very serious scene and they interrupt it with a very unfunny joke that doesn't work for the purpose of being anything other than a joke. Guardians of the Galaxy did this, and every single Marvel movie since has been trying to copy it, but it only worked in Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn's the only one who has figured out how to make this work. Like, everyone else just needs to stop trying because they suck at it. I'm sorry, but they do. The Red Room sucks, and this movie has the biggest plot convenience of all time, where at the start of the movie, the characters just so happen to have a red dust that cures them from brainwashing. That's an actual thing that they put in this movie. I'm putting this in D. I can have fun with it. It's like just a classic Marvel fun adventure. I can have fun with it. I enjoy a rewatch of it. But if you pay attention to it, it's not that good. It's going in D, but it's better than Ant-Man the Wasp and Far From Home purely because I think the first half is actually really solid. The movie should have come out in 2016. What if? What if season 1, I think, I'm going to upset a lot of people. I'm putting it in F. I don't like this. So here's the thing. I think there are 2 good episodes of What If season 1. It's episode. It's the Hank Pym episode and it's the Doctor Strange episode. So episode 1 is fun, but it's just Captain America, the first Avenger, but gender swapped. The second episode I think is a crime to storytelling with T'Challa Star-Lord because it makes no sense. Hela doesn't get her powers from her helmet. She has the powers. You don't get super strength if you wear Korg's arm, which I guess the Collector does. Yondu didn't think of the name Star-Lord. Peter Quill was called Star-Lord by his mom. There's no reason T'Challa should be called Star-Lord. I also think it's just like, yeah, I guess everyone in the main timeline is just a dumbass or a really bad person because T'Challa was able to fix the universe with just pure kindness. Like, that's just bad storytelling. I'm sorry, I know it's What If, so it gets away with doing some different things. But that's not an excuse to just be written poorly. I don't like it. At all. I don't like episode 2. I think episode 3, the murder mystery, is good. I think the Doctor Strange episode is still the best episode of Disney Plus Marvel television we've gotten. The zombies episode would work if it wasn't so tonally weird and that characters weren't cracking jokes in the same scene that one of their best friends gets brutally murdered. The Killmonger episode is boring. I'm sorry. Party Thor, I think, is somehow worse than Love and Thunder. It's the worst thing the MCU's ever done. It's worse than Captain Marvel. Episode 8, the Clint and Natasha stuff is awesome. That would have been a great episode if we weren't cutting to the Watcher fighting Ultron. And then episode 9, the fact they even teamed them up in the first place is just not okay. I hope season 2 is better because I had a lot of faith in the show when it was announced. I think it's a great concept. I think it can be an amazing series, but season 2 really needs to be better than season 1. It needs to, because like, if this was not an MCU show, I would not have watched past episode 2. I really want season 2 to be good because this is such a fun concept. It lets you tell stories that aren't limited by the MCU's continuity. Like, that's so good. It's not limited by the MCU's continuity, but because of how the multiverse works with the MCU, it's still like kind of canon. That's so cool. But make it good. Come on. Hopefully season 2 is good, even though the episodes they've like already told are happening all sound awful. I'm hoping. Moving on, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This is where I upset people because I don't think Shang-Chi is as good as people say. I still really enjoy the movie, and when people say Phase 4 sucked, I'm like, where were you when Shang-Chi came out? That said, it has some issues. I think the third act of this movie is like kind of bad. Not because it's bad. I think the third act would work great in a movie where the first 2 acts felt like they were leading to the third act. Because the first 2 acts, you have this relatively grounded martial arts film that just takes place on the streets of San Francisco or LA or wherever Shang-Chi is. And then they go to like, they go globetrotting, and then they go to like the nightclub thing, but it still feels like something that could exist in our world. But then you get to the third act, it's like, nope, there's a dragon. There's a dragon now. And it's like, if the first 2 acts felt like they were leading to fantasy, I would be able to buy it more, but as it stands, the moment Shang-Chi mounts a dragon, I'm like, this is different than the rest of the movie. The action in the movie, fantastic. There's not a bad fight. The opening fight, the bus fight, the fight between Shang-Chi and his sister, the fight with the Death Dealer, both fights with Wenwu. There's not a bad fight in the film. Wenwu is second best Marvel villain in my mind. He's just below Thanos. And I think Shang-Chi's one of the best new heroes they've introduced with the multiverse saga. I really love what they did with Shang-Chi, and that's going to pay off in the long run with the casting of Simu Liu and the fact that they made that such a compelling character. Like, everyone likes this movie. This movie doesn't really have any haters. It just has haters of its third act, like me. I'm going to put it in B. I really like it, but I'm also not in a hurry to rewatch it. I'm going to put it in B. I think it's fair in B. Eternals. A lot of these I've known where I'm going to put them before I talk about them. I just don't move them there till the end. Eternals, I genuinely don't know where I want it. So, Eternals doesn't have much in it that works. They introduce 10 new heroes. They introduce a whole new faction of villains, and they really introduce the Celestials in full. On top of that, they introduce characters like Dane Whitman and this different side world to help set up the future of the MCU. And then they toss a world-ending plotline in there, and the story takes place over a period of thousands of years. Now, if that sounds like it should be a series and not a 2.5-hour movie, you'd be right, because Eternals, if this was like an 8 or 10 episode Disney Plus series, this would be, and I genuinely mean this, the best Disney Plus series. Problem is, they crammed all of this into a 2.5-hour movie. So you have characters that are sidelined. You have characters not introduced till almost the third act. You have characters who stuff happens to them, like Ajax dies and Thena is said she's going to have her memory wiped before we even care about the character, so we don't have any investment in the sacrifice they're about to make. You have one of the most boring protagonists in Marvel history with Cersei. I hate her. She's almost as bad as Captain Marvel. She's so boring and just lifeless, and like, what happened? So there's only a few Eternals in this movie I like. Icarus, of course, is the best. Druig and Makari are cool, and Phastos is cool. The other ones are either sidelined, or they just completely fall flat, or the movie just doesn't use them to their fullest potential, which really bothers me. There's no emotional connection with the Eternal and Deviant conflict. I mean, the coolest thing in this movie is the shot where you see the Celestial and Chloe Zhao had, like, So Chloe Zhao, I think, was actually not a bad person to helm this movie. I actually think she directed it well. I just don't think other elements of the movie benefited Chloe Zhao's style for this. I'd be okay with her coming back for Eternals 2. I know there's a lot of people who are like, I don't know. I'd be okay if she came back for Eternals 2. I don't think she was the problem with the movie. I think other stuff was the problem with the movie. I don't hate this movie as much as most people, and I don't like it as much as some people. It's worse than C. It's better than F, because I do enjoy rewatching. I think it's going to go in D. It's going to go up here with Black Widow. Hawkeye! Okay, I rewatched Hawkeye for Christmas. And, Hawkeye has a lot of good. A lot of good. And it has a fair amount of bad. I think Jeremy Renner is great in this. Finally getting something to do. I think Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop is up there with Robert Downey Jr. in terms of best comic book casting. I gotta stretch real quick. Ugh. I think that Maya Lopez as, Echo, played by, God, I can't remember the actress's name right now. I feel really bad. Alakwa Cox. I think her character works for what she needs to be in this story. I still don't know how they're going to pull off the Echo show. I'm not sure where you take her character from here. This would have been a great place to end her character, but whatever. We're getting an Echo show that's from writers of Daredevil and Better Call Saul. So, I don't think the writing with that show will be the issue, but I'm hoping it's a good show. I enjoy Swordsman. I think he is just the perfect amount of goofy and over the top. In terms of things that fall flat, Kazi does not work for me. Eleanor as a villain does not work for me. They bring in Kingpin and they sacrifice all the scenes that add depth and complexities to his character in favor of just having it be a reveal, and that leads to Kingpin falling flat and just spending the entire final episode getting his butt kicked, and that's not cool. That's not the Kingpin I know. I'm not saying he has to be exactly like Netflix. You just have to make him good, and they didn't. I do think this is another thing that could have been a movie. It works better as a show than some of the other shows. But the symptom of most of the Disney Plus shows is if you're going to make a 6-episode series, just make a movie. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm going to go middle of the road. I'm going to put it in C tier. I'm going to put Hawkeye in C. I'm going to put it just right smack dab in the middle there. I hope we do see more of both Hawkeyes in the future. Spider-Man No Way Home. So, last time I did this tier list, I had Spider-Man at S. Spider-Man No Way Home, if the apartment fight if the rest of the movie was like that, this would be the best Marvel movie. This would be S. Unfortunately, we have the first half of this movie that's not that great. It's fine. It's fine. I enjoy it, but it's really not good until Willem Dafoe shows up and starts doing goblin shit. However, I do think this is one of the best Peter Parker stories they've told on film, and the fact that the cameos for all the other characters work to further his story instead of just being there for the sake of cameos makes it so much better. We get the great power, great responsibility line. We get one of the best fight scenes between Spider-Man and Green Goblin, one of the best fight scenes, one-on-one fight scenes we've seen in the MCU. MJ's good in this, Aunt May's good in this, Ned's good in this when he's in it, although he's sidelined a lot. Toby and Andrew, it was like they never hung up the suits. Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina fell back into these roles like they never left them. Even though Thomas Hayden Church and, who plays Lizard? Is it Rhys Ifans or something? They didn't phone in their vocal performances even though they weren't on set, and you can tell Jamie Foxx is enjoying being Electro this time around, so it has so much going for it, and the fact that it ends with Spidey making his own suit and swinging through New York automatically brings us up a grade. I'm putting No Way Home in A. It can go with its buddy Homecoming, but it doesn't deserve to be in the big leagues that it was once in. Moon Knight. I've previously said Moon Knight's the best series, although this one really fell victim to the 6-episode format because they have too much story in this one. This is the one that needed more episodes instead of just becoming a movie. Loki's the only one where the 6 episodes have actually benefited it. I think Moon Knight has 5.5 great episodes because I think the finale could have used more setup work. I think they had to rush through a couple things because that's just the nature of how this story worked. I do, however, think that Oscar Isaac gave us the best performance in the MCU, if we're not including Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio in Daredevil. I think that Mark and Steven are two amazing characters who are both beautifully written, and they're written to be different enough that you can actually buy them as two different people. I think Moon Knight and Mr. Knight, I think that works. I know they made changes to Mr. Knight, but I'm very okay with it. The costume design, oh my god, top tier. I just wish they didn't CGI the Moon Knight costume all the time because it's such a good costume. Do I go S or A? I love Moon Knight enough, I think I'm willing to put it in S. Nope, I'm going A. Because I was thinking back to that one episode where they had to blow through stuff too quickly. So I'm going A for Moon Knight. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Okay. So here we're at some interesting stuff. Because Multiverse of Madness is half Doctor Strange, or it's like 33% Doctor Strange. Yeah, I'm going to say half. It's half Doctor Strange story. No, it's 45% Doctor Strange story. 50% Wanda story. 5% America Chavez story. I'm also leaning back in my chair because I was leaning forward and I feel like relaxing. So sorry, I'm all the way over here now. Wanda Maximoff is a full-on villain at the start of this film, and a lot of people did not like that. They took issue with that because that's not where she was at the end of WandaVision. Watch the post-credit scene of WandaVision. Yes, it was. I feel like that's a WandaVision issue, not a Multiverse of Madness issue. I think Doctor Strange in this movie has a good enough arc. I don't think that it's an amazing arc. It's not as good as his arc in the first film. But what I love about it is that it directly calls into question every decision he has made through the MCU, and immediately within the first few minutes of the movie, you as the viewer are forced to doubt whether or not Doctor Strange actually has all of this together, or if there was another play to save half the universe. And then they also propose the fact that he also needs to be holding the knife, which fuels into that other arc, and directly addresses the criticism of No Way Home that Doctor Strange acted out of character. No, he doesn't. He's egotistical. He's a narcissist. He always thinks he can do everything. That's why he did that thing in No Way Home. I mean, he wasn't even playing 4D chess in Infinity War. He was playing like 8-dimensional chess. Like, that's how much stuff he was doing. And so obviously that would go to his head. And this movie forces him to realize that maybe he shouldn't do that, and he finally lets someone else hold the knife. I think Doctor Strange has an arc. I just don't think people saw Doctor Strange's arc because they were either too caught up in the Wanda stuff or too busy complaining. I think Michael Waldron is a good writer. I'm actually okay with him taking Secret Wars over. The Illuminati. So the Illuminati are almost what people were worried No Way Home was going to be, because the Illuminati are... they're fan service. And yes, they have a purpose in the movie because they have to bring home the point. Doctor Strange is like kind of bad in every universe, and then eventually 616 Doctor Strange is going to be like that, or 1999-99, depending on if you've seen the Spider-Verse trailer or not. The fact that he'll eventually be like that. But oh my god, after every introduction, you can tell that there's a moment of silence so the audience can clap. Like it was built in for fan service. You have Peggy Carter. Oh my god, she gets a cool entrance. And then, like, we have Black Bull, King of the Inhumans. Oh my god, Black Bull. Yo, everyone loves Black Bull. And then it's like, Reed Richards, played by John Krasinski. Holy shit. And it's like, okay, I get it. You're just looking for the fan servicey stuff because everyone expected cameos, so you wrote in cameos, and then you had to go film it. I see what you're doing, Marvel. I get it. I hope we get a main MCU Illuminati one day. That would be cool, although I'm starting to think that might not happen. I don't hate this movie. I actually like it more than most people. I do, however, don't think it belongs in C tier. I might put it in D, if for nothing else, just for the fact that, besides being called Multiverse of Madness, the only three universes we see are all just our universe, but a bit different. So that's not that exciting. Miss Marvel. Here's the thing with Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel has 4 very good episodes. Episodes 1, 2, 3, and 6 are great. And they tell this great, story of Kamala Khan just having to solve the small things that are happening in her town. and or not even her town, just her neighborhood of her temple or her mosque or whatever it's called. I'm so sorry, I forgot what it's called. And then just her friends, her school life, her family life. It's so small scale. It's so nice to see until it decides to take a 2-episode detour to Pakistan to learn about partition. Kamala Khan time travels, and she also now has to fight a villain who wants to destroy the universe, and that is the worst villain in the MCU. And so for that reason alone, this series falls quite a few spots, because for a while, no, I didn't say Siri, I said series, because for a while, this series was on track to be one of the best. What they should have done is made this a 2-season show and made all the Pakistan stuff season 2, and just kept the Jersey stuff as season 1, and it would have worked out better. Now the question is, do I like it more or less than Hawkeye, or is it the same? I'm going to put it in C tier, because I love Aman Vellani's Kamala Khan. I love her so much. It's the only reason I'm actually interested in the Marvels as a movie at all. Now, we're here, boys. We're at Thor Love and Thunder. And Captain Marvel's about to get a friend, because Love and Thunder's going in Captain Marvel tier. Love and Thunder only has 2 things going for it, but even they're not that good. It has the Jane storyline, which I think would have worked even better if it was just a Jane movie, if it was just a Mighty Thor movie. And it has Gore the God Butcher. Now, Gore the God Butcher as a character falls flat because he doesn't butcher gods, he just kidnaps children. He only kills one god on screen, but despite being called the God Butcher. But the only reason he's memorable is because Christian Bale is knocking out of the park, and he is in a much better movie. Other than that, you have Thor being a complete dumbass throughout the movie, being written completely out of character the entire time. You have Korg being incredibly annoying, and I just wish he would have died when Zeus threw the lightning bolt through him. You have Valkyrie, who's not in this character for any reason. You have Lady Sif hyped up to come back, also not in this movie for any reason. You have a great potential for Star-Lord and the Guardians to be with Thor throughout most of this movie, because Star-Lord's dad was a god and Gore hates gods, but that's like they just write them out of the movie immediately, which James Gunn's happy about, but I'm not happy about it. Like, what were they thinking? And then you have Omnipotent City, which I think, I understand why it's here. I know what Taika Waititi was going for, but I wish they would make it just this bad. I do like that all the gods seem to have, like, their own designs, and they're not just robed figures. They're all kind of interesting looking. That's cool to me, but, like, and Zeus, I will add. I think Zeus works for what the movie is. I know why Zeus is here. I think he works for what they're trying to do. He would have worked better if he got killed. What should have happened is Gore should have showed up to Omnipotent City and killed every single god. That would have been awesome and actually would have made this movie good. But alas, he did not do that, because I guess he was just kidnapping children the whole movie. The goats in this movie, only one joke in this movie works. One joke. And I'll show it to you guys instead of describing it. Other than that, the only thing I think that works is the Shadow Realm fight and Jane's death, because they're the only 2 movies where the movie decided to actually become serious and not crack a really bad joke and ruin any sort of tension or drama that the movie had created. But the Shadow Realm fight's only good because it's a fight that looks cool. If it was a fight anywhere else, it would suck. And then Jane's death, I mean, it's good enough. I can think of other ways they could have done it better, but, like, it's good enough. Jane's the only good thing in this movie, it feels like. So it's going Captain Marvel tier. I Am Groot. I Am Groot's fun. It's just a fun series of shorts. I'm putting it in B with Shang-Chi. Not much to talk about there. It's just a fun thing. She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Okay. We're now at some difficult stuff. So She-Hulk has 4 very good episodes. 1, 2, 7, and 8, I think, are very good. I like 7 when she's with Blonsky, and that's she has a great monologue. I think 8, not just because Daredevil's in, it's also the best written in the series. And then 1 and 2, I think, are a good 1-2 punch. However, episodes 3 through 6 are boring. They are so boring. And I have no desire to rewatch them. And then episode 9, I love that they ended episode 9, or that they end the series with She-Hulk saying, well, this is my show, give me control of it, breaking out and fixing the writing. It doesn't excuse the fact that there was bad writing in the show. My only issue with it is that it then half-assed just gets rid of arcs and characters and different stories that the show was building up over time. That doesn't work for me. That kind of bothers me. It's worse than everything in D. Well, is it worse than everything? You know what? I don't want to put it in F, though, because I enjoy at least half of it. I'm going to put it in D. I'm going to put it in D tier. I think D tier is a fair spot to put it. Moving on, Werewolf by Night. Werewolf by Night is going all the way in A. Talk about a short right there. Talk about an amazing film. Talk about a great TV special. Great writing, great directing from Michael Giacchino. A great score also from Michael Giacchino. I think Gael Garcia Bernal and Laura Donnelly were two big gets for the MCU, especially Gael Garcia Bernal, because he's never bad in anything he does, and he killed it as the werewolf. Also, the fact they did most of this practically is awesome. And also what's great is this is disconnected enough from the MCU. There's only one reference to the larger MCU, and it's just a picture of the Avengers, but it's like a drawing. So it's like you can watch it on its own. It's great. I love the black and white nature. Love the self-contained nature. I think Elsa Bloodstone and Jack Russell have a great dynamic in this, and the story between them is great. I always love that scene when they're trapped in that one room together having to figure out how they're going to get out. That's a great scene. And Man-Thing's in this. What's not to like? They put Man-Thing in the MCU. I hope we get more of this. I would love to get another Halloween special. Just give us another adventure with these people every single Halloween. I'm here for it all the way. The only weak part of this, I think, is Elsa Bloodstone, because she doesn't look right. They better make her look like Elsa Bloodstone. She doesn't look or feel like Elsa Bloodstone. I know they're going to get her there eventually, but like at least give her the red hair. Moving on to Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Okay, I put the first Black Panther in A. Wakanda Forever is worse than the first Black Panther. I think you could maybe cut a bit out of it. I also think you can tell that they were affected by the fact they had a time crunch to rewrite this movie after Chadwick Boseman's tragic and unfortunate death. Because there's some things in this that just kind of happened. So Riri Williams just invented a thing that can detect vibranium, and she did it on a bet. And then that changes the course of the world, basically. And I always found it annoying that no one ever got on Riri for the fact that she basically killed Queen Ramonda because it was her invention and Namor wanted her and they were trying to protect her, and that's why Ramonda died. Also, it's like kind of stupid. And it's just stupid enough that it doesn't really bother me. But the fact that they're like, alright, why don't we just hold a blow dryer to Namor and that'll defeat him. It's kind of dumb. But other than that, holy shit, man. Shuri's arc in this is one of the best in the MCU. What they do with Okoye of kind of taking her away from Dora Milaje and making her a Midnight Angel is cool, giving Ao a bit more to do also in that regard. M'Baku is one of the best parts of this. The white people storyline, as people call it, which is just the CIA plotline with Martin Freeman and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, is only in here because Michael Freeman was in the first movie, or Martin Freeman was in the first movie. He doesn't need to be in here. Every time it cuts to him, I just get annoyed because like the Wakanda stuff is that much cooler. I think the chase sequence in this is almost as good as the chase in the first Black Panther movie. I think the flooding of Wakanda is cool, and the way that it's so layered and you have characters everywhere in this city. I think once again, though, we have a third act that's not great. I think the fight between the Wakandans and the Talo Kanil does not work. However, the 1v1 between Shuri and Namor, or Namor as they call him, works. I also think the music in this is just as good, if not better, than the first film, and Kona La Brisa is an awesome song, and Lift Me Up by Rihanna was well-deserved of that Oscar nomination, and I think should have won, but whatever. Natu Natu won, which I'm not opposed to either, because that was a good song. I think I'm going to put Wakanda Forever in B tier. It's going in B for Black Panther. I enjoy it. It's not as good as the first one, but it's close. They're right back-to-back on my, ranking. Okay, last three things here. The Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special I'm also putting in A. It's the worst Guardians of the Galaxy thing, but it's still top-tier MCU. It's just a great little fun little intermission that James Gunn did, but he still preserved the the heart of these characters and the emotional storytelling that he's known for with these movies. And even though it's just a 40-minute made-for-TV special in which Mantis and Drax human traffic Kevin Bacon, it's still so perfect. It's so good, and it doesn't feel weird. Like, you would think it's jarring at first when you're like, okay, we're celebrating Christmas in space and we're getting Kevin Bacon, but it's not jarring. It works so well. James Gunn made a masterpiece with this. I don't really have much more to say about the Holiday Special, besides the fact that I love it. It has a great soundtrack also. And I don't know what Christmas is, but Christmas Time is here, and Here It Is Christmas Time are my two new favorite Christmas songs. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. You are about to see a drastic change between Quantumania and Guardians 3, because I'm putting Quantumania in F tier. I think it's worse than Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really think this is one of the worst Marvel movies. The only reason I'm not putting it in Captain Marvel tier is because I actually do like Cassie in this movie. I like Hank Pym in this movie, and I love Kang the Conqueror in this movie. I think Kang was a great villain. I think Cassie, yeah, questionable at times, but I didn't hate her. I'm ready to see more Cassie. And the fact that Hank Pym finally gets something to do in these movies and he turns the tide of a war, that's awesome. I think this movie would be better received if we didn't know that Kang was going to be the villain in the Kang Dynasty. Because now it's like, okay, so Ant-Man whooped his ass. Cool, so now he shouldn't be a problem for the rest of the Avengers. If we didn't know he was coming back, and we thought this was going to be his only appearance and he surprises us with coming back, everyone would be more okay with it. We all would be. I think that final fight is raw as hell. I understand the circumstances of how Kang was defeated, but I still think there's a better way to do it in which that doesn't happen. Scott has no discernible arc in this movie. He starts out by being selfish and just wanting his daughter, and he ends the movie by being selfish and just wanting his daughter. He doesn't learn anything. He doesn't grow. The only reason he joins the fight at the end isn't to help the people. It's to save Cassie. Wasp, she shouldn't even be in the title. It should just be Ant-Man Quantumania, because Wasp was not in this movie. Everything the Hope does in this movie is in the trailer for this movie. Janet, yeah, Janet's kind of important, but like, it's so stupid that it's like, oh yeah, I could have told you at any point that there's a guy in the quantum realm we don't want to fuck with, but I'm not going to tell you that until we're already down there, because it's not important. It's just, this movie does so many weird things creatively that I don't like, and I wish it didn't. And I was writing a better version of this movie while the credits were rolling, which I feel like is not something that should happen. So I'm putting Quantumania in F tier. It's bad. Kang's the only reason it's not in Captain Marvel tier. Now it's for Guardians 3, and this is why I say this is a drastic shift, because Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is going in ass. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is maybe my favorite MCU movie. It may have given Iron Man a run for its money. I have seen this movie twice now. I cried both times. I loved it both times. I think it was a perfect movie. I legit have no issues with it whatsoever. I think Adam Warlock worked because I know that they're trying to play the long game and turn Adam Warlock into what we know him as instead of just doing the Captain Marvel problem where he's already at his strongest and most developed in the first movie. I love the High Evolutionary as a villain. I loved seeing Rocket's story. It was deeply emotional. Don't take your kids to see this movie. I love seeing Rocket's story. Groot was the MVP. Star-Lord was awesome in this. Chris Pratt's performance was great. Mantis, Drax, and Nebula, I think, got the most to do that they've gotten to do in the MCU period in this movie, and I adored Nebula in this, and what James Gunn did with Gamora in solving that problem that was open for him in Infinity War and Endgame, I think he solved it in the best way possible, quite honestly. Everything he did with that story. And the third act is great. No Sleep Till Brooklyn, the soundtrack's great, that hallway sequence, that one shot is great, and man, when Rocket flatlines, but they bring him back, man, I don't think there's a quicker way to make me cry. And even stuff like him getting his name, him learning he's a raccoon, all that stuff, it's so good, it's so perfect, it's so emotional that I refuse to believe James Gunn didn't have that figured out back in 2014. Yeah, I don't have a single issue with this film. It is an S-tier movie for me. It is a perfect movie. It might be the best MCU movie. Yeah, alright, I'm going to stick with this. So, there you guys go. I'll pull just the tier list up. We'll get rid of all the BS. I'll get rid of my face. You guys can see the actual tier list that I have here. And see just how divisive that thing probably is. Because I know a lot of people would have a lot of issues with how I did a lot of this. So, well, there you guys go. That is my Marvel tier list. Feel free to make another one. Definitely, you know, everyone, I want you guys to go make your own Marvel tier list and then send it to me. I have Instagram. You can send it to me on Instagram. I guess I also have Twitter, technically, because that's how I made my account. So send it to me there. Or if you do a video on it, link me the video so I can see it. I want to see your tier list, or just tell me if you don't agree with something I did or what. But yes, please, I want to see your stuff. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.